Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Hello Fam podcast. I'm your host, Shalini, and I'm excited to have you all here with us today. We hope you're all continuing to enjoy the podcast and our community articles, which are now available on our Facebook group called the Longevity Lab by Hello Fam. So please make sure to follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn to get the latest updates. We also post on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, so follow us at hellofam.app. Now, back to the podcast where we talk to longevity doctors, key opinion leaders, and others onto their views into longevity. Our goal is to provide you with greater insight into the world of living long and well, as well as learn some practical tips to incorporate into your daily lives. Join me in welcoming today's guest speaker, Dr. Anish Patel.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with us today. So, just getting to know you, can you give us a little background about yourself, how you got to medicine, and Hello Fam, as well as any of your hobbies and interests?
Sure. Yes. So, like you said, my name is Dr. Anish Patel. I am a board-certified emergency physician by training. And within the space of emergency medicine, I've worn several different hats. Most recently, I was the medical director for my emergency department for the past 3 years. And before that, in other shops, I was assistant medical director, patient experience champion, scribe program manager, and go-to IT guy for my local physician group. So I've worn a bunch of different hats. What brought me to Hello Fam is even before I got into medicine, meaning like medical school, I had an interest in quality of life. And in the ER, I'm often seeing patients who have terrible quality of life. Either they're, very old, or mostly they're dealing with chronic medical conditions, high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, kidney failure, all that. And at a certain point, I wanted to kind of pivot to longevity medicine to kind of address these issues ahead of time, trying to focus more on helping people live longer, healthier lives instead of kind of meeting them at the very end of their lifespan. Outside of medicine, I recently started a pottery class, so I'm trying my hand at that. And then kind of adjacent to medicine, I had a pet project that was on hold for a bit that I'm hoping to get back to. It's actually a medical review of Bollywood movies. So I watched the top 3 or 4 Bollywood movies for the past 30 years, and I examined it all for depictions of illness, injury, and healthcare, and just hoping to bring light to ways in which the media might not depict these things very accurately, and kind of bringing light on how we can internalize those bad depictions and lead to misunderstandings about healthcare and illness. So I'm hoping to get back into that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Definitely a lot of hats worn throughout your
Yes.
career, and we're glad you're here now and like helping Hello Fam with all these experiences under your belt and that Bollywood medicine intersection. That's very interesting and niche. I'm excited to see how that turns out. So thank you for sharing, and I hope our listeners are excited to learn more about you. So let's dive right into the podcast and discussing Hello Fam's mission about increasing longevity. So starting off, what is your definition of longevity and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, for me, the definition of longevity is health span plus lifespan. Lifespan just being how long you live, and health span being how many of those years are healthy. For me, optimizing that is not only just focused on managing diseases and avoiding diseases, but focusing on, again, quality of life, trying to figure out how we can make those years as enjoyable as possible, focusing on wellness and health and just thriving. All those pieces together are longevity for me.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's always a stress on it being about adding numbers, but not adding healthy
Yeah.
numbers. So
Right.
it's all about quality of life.
Right.
So moving on to a big part about living long, nutrition. So a big thing is when it comes to weight loss and physical well-being, a balanced diet always pops up. And considering America is a cultural melting pot, how would you define a balanced diet beyond just salads and incorporating protein?
Right. I'm so glad that you're referring to it as a balanced diet and not an optimal diet or an ideal diet, or definitely not one of those fad diets like,
Yeah.
keto or paleo or, Atkins or one of those things. Because it really is, it's all about balance. You have to balance your nutritional requirements, like what your body actually needs, but you also have to balance that against your lifestyle and your goals, and what resources you have available to you. So for me, a balanced diet, obviously, eating, fruits and vegetables, getting enough protein, that kind of thing. Um, if I had to guess for, the average American, a balanced diet probably does need more protein and probably does need to cut back on some of the fat and carbs. But like you mentioned, America is a melting pot. And so there are so many different foods available to us and foods that we enjoy eating, and working them into a balanced diet is so important. Because if you don't like what you're eating, then you're going to be miserable, and you're not going to be able to stick to, whatever balanced diet you're trying to achieve. I actually worked with a nutrition coach and a personal trainer for about 2 years. And I remember struggling trying to figure out, when I visit home and I have my mom's food, how do I figure out how to track that? How do I know how much protein or how much fat or how many carbs are in this, obscure ethnic dish? So luckily, I was using the MyFitnessPal app, and there are a lot of ethnic foods in there. But definitely, yeah, a balanced diet does include food that you enjoy eating. But thinking about a broader picture approach to a balanced diet is kind of figuring out not only the macronutrients, but also a balance of, whether you're vegetarian and you're kind of exclusively eating plant-based foods, or, what are the healthier meats and what are the healthier options for you to choose from.
Yeah, it's very all-encompassing. And I think you mentioned fad diets. It's easy to fall into that and see some short-term change, but it's not sustainable. And sometimes the long-term effects prove to be counterintuitive to the initial goal of weight loss and being healthier in the long run. So
Yeah,
exactly. Thank you so
yeah,
much for sharing that. And
yeah.
you mentioned you having previous experience working with a diet coach. What piece of advice was fundamental to you that incited and motivated real consistent change with you?
I think two things. One of the things that my coach explained to me was that there aren't any foods that I have to eat, and similarly, there are no forbidden foods. It
Mhm.
really is about, like we talked about, finding that balance. So figuring out not only how many grams of protein I need to eat, but also the carbs and the fat, and what kind of balance I can find there. So, if I wanted to eat cake, if I wanted to eat some fries, or if I wanted to eat some unhealthy food, I could still do that, but obviously in a smaller quantity. Um, I also learned how to turn some of my favorite foods into healthier foods. Again, referring back to that melting pot, one of my favorite dishes is chicken biryani, which, if you haven't had it, is chicken and rice. And I really like to cook, so I learned how to make it myself. I decreased the rice, I increased the chicken, and so I'm still able to eat that food that I love eating. But I'm able to do it in a way that helps me meet my goals. The second thing is that he emphasized to me that, you don't have to be perfect every single day. You don't have to exactly hit the number of macros that you're trying to get. It really is about making incremental changes and, on average, getting to the goals that you're trying to get to in terms of your fat, your carb, and your protein.
Yeah, and also speaking from Indian cuisine background, it is easy and hard to sometimes balance between rice, which is a huge part of Asian cuisine in general, while balancing the protein aspect of it. So that was very interesting to hear, like that ratio that you have to really be aware of.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
very
then
doable if you
Mhm.
if you're methodical about it. If you can track exactly what you're eating, try to figure out how you need to adjust that, and then implement that on a daily basis. It's doable, but it does take a little bit of work, and definitely some
Yeah,
good guidance.
yeah, I guess going shopping for that, you have to think more about how you're gonna start adjusting different things. I know even like cauliflower is a nice alternative, and then cauliflower rice. It's a nice alternative to eating like basmati rice or any other rice that's out there. So,
Yeah, I never
I,
thought I would be a
Mhm.
cauliflower rice person because, like you're saying,
Yeah.
rice is so central to South Asian cuisine, but I'm
Mhm.
a fan now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I guess the other end of being healthy is physical exercise. So you also said you work with a personal trainer. What are your recommendations for those who are struggling with working out and continuing to working out, being again that consistency that comes along with this? Because it is sometimes like a mental and physical barrier. So was there any advice that you got from your personal trainer or anything that you felt yourself going through that journey?
Yeah, going back to what I said earlier, he emphasized that you don't have to have perfect workouts. You don't have to nail every lift every time. You don't have to necessarily go to the gym, 4 times a week religiously, forever. It's really about making incremental changes and doing what you can. So for me, working as an ER doctor, sometimes I'm working morning shifts. It could be afternoon shifts. It could be overnight shifts. And so I remember it was hard for me to have a regular workout routine. So some weeks it was only 2 workouts, even though it was supposed to be 4. But what he explained to me and what totally resonates with me is that it's about, making those small changes, making baby steps, doing what you can. Even if you can only go for a walk, only, a couple times a week and not necessarily every day, even if you can only do a little bit of exercise at home, it's better than doing nothing. The important thing is that you do get started and that you do move, instead of conceptualizing it as an all or nothing. Like, oh, I have to, lift all this weight and I have to do it 4 times a week and I have to be perfect about it. Otherwise, I'm not going to get my results. It's not actually like that. It's about the effort you put into it.
Yeah, and I guess going a little nitty gritty detail into that, you saying like your hours are very crazy and your shifts kind of changing every now and then. Do you always try to aim for the same time frame of doing these workouts? Or meaning like do you always go in the mornings before work? Do you do it midday or do you do it after? Or is it again kind of dependent on your work schedule?
Yeah, I used to try to wing it. And because of the irregularity of my work schedule, as well as, like I mentioned before, I had some administrative duties. Oftentimes I would just miss a day because it got away from me. And so what we learned to do is to schedule it in ahead of time. So I look at my shifts and I think, okay, well, on this day I have the morning off, so I'm going to schedule it in to make sure it happens. This other day, it's a morning shift, so in the afternoon or evening, I'll squeeze it in there. So just thinking about it ahead of time and especially putting it on the calendar for me was what did the trick.
Yeah, I think I like that. Thank you again for sharing. This
Yeah.
is good one. Incremental change, scheduling, just I think really being mindful and planning about it. And then that ends up making you wanting to commit to that. So
Yeah,
I
I will
like what
say
they
the
said.
first year I worked with him, I was really hard on myself if I did miss a workout or if I had a day where I didn't eat very well. And it was frustrating for me because, again, as an ER doctor, you don't necessarily get a break during your shift in order to eat. And so it's very easy to not be able to hit your targets in terms of your diet. Definitely easy to not hit your targets in terms of exercise, also because of the schedule. Um, but eventually, his words of advice kind of rang true that, I am making some incremental changes. So, I would say to the general public, don't be too hard on yourself. If your diet isn't perfect, if your exercise routine isn't perfect, what matters is that you try.
Yeah. And I think we are nearing the end of the podcast, and you kind of inadvertently gave part of an answer to what my
Yeah,
final question is going to be, which is
great.
what piece of advice would you give to every patient out there?
Yeah, that would be my advice, would be to make small changes. I know, picking a gym and signing up for a membership can be daunting, or like trying to establish care with a personal trainer can be a big threshold to meet. But honestly, just increasing your movement, going for walks, taking the stairs instead of the escalators or the elevator. Small changes can add up in big ways. Um, the very least you could do is, let's say you're going to the store and you drove there, just park further away from the doors, like get a couple extra steps in. Like you can do that much. Eventually these changes add up. You get in the mindset of making positive changes, and you're more likely to make additional changes, and things kind of snowball, and you get in a good place. Um, the other advice I would have that's maybe a little bit more concrete is, let's say you're thinking about initiating a diet program, or you want to eat healthier, or you want to lose weight or change your body composition. If you're not doing anything right now, I would recommend that you start tracking what you're eating. Download a diet tracking app. For example, I use MyFitnessPal, but there's a bunch of different apps out there. Keep eating what you're eating, but start to track exactly what it is that you're eating. You're going to be surprised about what your dietary habits are. You might be surprised about how many calories you're taking in. If you don't have a good baseline understanding of what you're eating and what you're doing right now, it's going to be a lot harder to implement changes in the right direction to get you where you want to go. So I'd say at least start tracking what you're eating on the diet end of things, and on the exercise and movement side of things, I'd say do a little bit, do even the bare minimum, just walk a little bit more. That'll help.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's funny, we also had a previous guest speaker say the similar thing, which is
Oh,
you
good.
start tracking and like just start writing it down. Once you see it physically down on paper, you start to notice really what you're eating that you don't even junk food or even just good food. You don't realize what you're doing. So yeah,
Right.
I'm glad we have this type of consensus within the Hello Fam team. And I hope our
Right.
listeners also notice that. So
Right.
thank you. We're at the end of the podcast. So thank you, Dr. Patel, so much for coming out, sharing your advice, and I hope our listeners enjoyed what you had to share today.
Awesome. Thanks you for having me.